exactly. Yeah, because and then it goes back to
Yeah.
my statement of like our memory, or I would say in a general sense, where our histories, right? It's somewhat. It doesn't. It's not there for us to be bound in the past. It's there so that we can be able to learn and flourish, so that our future can look brighter than our past.
I mean, the memory is still there
Yeah.
because there's this saying where they say, like, history's there so we don't repeat it,
Yeah.
something like that. And a lot of times we constantly go back to our history. Oh, this happened at this point of time. And so we try to look at the world through history, through historical things that happened. And whenever we do that, we constantly find whatever wrong happened in history, we'll also find it in today. And so it's hard to move on, but I also understand the idea of looking back and learning from your mistakes. And also because we are humans and we have like our conscience, where especially with the education system that constantly teaches us ideas of history as if they're happening today. So it makes it different. It makes it very difficult for me to navigate the world with this future perspective and this betterment type of perspective, when the only thing I know is this is what happened and this is what's going to continue to happen, because it's sort of like said so many times that it kind of becomes reality and perception. And like perception is reality. And so if my perception has been completely shaped on history, then I begin to see that in reality.
Because okay, perception is reality in that sense, right? But the thing is this: let's say, for example, you are looking at histories.
Yeah.
In order for you to even look at history, you have to look through the lens of perception, right? You have to look through a worldview, right? So there's something that is already been groomed in you. Let's say your family, or
Isn't that worldview sort of established by history, though?
well, okay, that's gonna be on a micro level, because okay, so let's say, for example, like us, we grew up with our parents. Our parents taught us something, right? Whatever they taught us might be an impartation of the history that they had gone through, or the history that they have learned, right? So whatever we have is what we're gonna look through, right? That's gonna be able to create our perception, right? And then we go to education, we go to school. Let's say school is teaching us something else, right? And then we're gonna look that history through the perception that we initially had from our house, right? I mean, I think that's the way it should be. I mean, in most cases, like when you're looking at it, I'm going to school, I'm using a perceptions based on my parents or based on my family, because that they impart those culture, they impart those worldview into me, and then in order for me to explain or understand the worldview that the school education is teaching me, I have to look through that lens.
Yeah, you look at the things that are displayed to you through the lenses of which you grew up with. Your perception.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So that's where my question was. Is like, okay, so you have your perception is your reality, and then if you say something about like if your perception is your reality, and your perception is primarily built upon the histories.
Yeah.
However, you are constantly experiencing reality.
Yeah.
The history might be altered by your current experience.
Isn't it the other way around, where your reality is sort of like altered by history? So it's like in the sense that history happened, and so it's in the past, but I'm finding things to identify in the present with like my history. Let's say, I don't want to touch on anything sensitive, but let's say just something devastating happened in the past, and you've moved on that, and you're living in a completely different world, different status, different class, everything, but you constantly find something to identify with that has a relation to your past.
Yeah.
And so I think that aspect of it is like you look at the world through the perception of what happened to you in the past, and you constantly look for those things.
Yeah. So it's a continuation of progress.
Yes, and
because you're going to constantly change and interpret life and reality different way based on experiences that you are constantly experiencing.
Yeah.
And then the constant change within your reality is gonna impact your perception within that moment.
Yeah.
Yet you still go back sometimes. Like, most people do go back sometimes due to, especially if you go to a traumatic experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think our goal is we want to break free from the shackles of our past. Like, we want to learn those lessons and leave whatever detrimental state situation that we faced. I don't want to be in the same situation that I lived in a couple years ago. I don't want to kind of relive that. I don't want to relive my past trauma, but I want to learn and take those things that I've learned. And I think that is where you build up on history, not in the sense that you repeat it, but you learn those lessons. And because your perception is definitely going to be built from your past. And so you can't completely become oblivious of that, because those are the lessons that you will take into your future. But sort of just like building up on it, not in the sense of backsliding and going back to your history and recreating your history, but rather perfecting based on the lessons and the things that you learned and accumulated.
No, accumulate it and then grow from it.
Grow
Elevate.
from it. Yeah, elevate.
Which is on top, which is gonna be this is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I think
podcast.
Yeah, we talk about history. How do we grow from that? How do we
grow?
how do we become better? How do we elevate?